Welcome back to Belharra, the birth story of a biotech podcast. I'm Jeff Yonker, your host and the CEO of Belharra Therapeutics. I'm particularly pleased to be joined by one of my tremendous colleagues today, Gary O'Neill. Gary is Chief Scientific Officer at Belharra and a man of many, many talents. In this episode, we'll dig into Belharra's next-generation chemoproteomics platform. Gary will explain why our new approach to chemoproteomics has the potential to look across the entire proteome and see entirely new small molecule binding pockets. And if that sounded like word salad to you, then you've tuned into the right podcast. As Gary will explain, because of the novelty of our approach, we believe we can change the definition of an undruggable protein. Most importantly, we'll talk about the immense positive impact we believe this science and our platform can have for patients and for society broadly, as we strive to create medicines for intractable disease. So with that, let's jump into it with Gary. Gary's also with me, one of the first two employees at Belharra, and so we kind of got this going back when, almost 2 years ago now, coming up on our 2-year anniversary. So congrats on sticking it out this long.
Likewise.
So I want to know, back when you were little Gary, what did you want to be when you grew up?
I think I always wanted to be a scientist.
You knew that from the beginning?
I think so. I thought about being a doctor, but I think the laboratory science was always an attraction to me.
Now, you grew up in Canada. Did you grow up around some scientists? I mean, or was it like see them on TV, or not that they don't have scientists in Canada, but I mean, just did you have some sort of idea of what that would be, and then you were just gravitated towards it, or were you had particular role models in mind?
I think my friends at that time in high school, were all scientifically oriented,
Okay.
and all ended up in science. So it was friends
Okay.
during high school that really drew me into the sciences.
And any sort of variances from that? Didn't want to be a fireman at any point, or dabble with being a movie star or something like that?
Apart from trying to be a motorcycle mechanic at one point,
Yeah?
but I realized that true passion and intellectual challenge was in the sciences.
Okay, and so walk us through that. So you're in high school, you're heading off to college. Were you science all the way through?
All the way through. I made a decision in high school to become science-oriented
Yep.
and dabbled in different types of sciences.
Yep.
Quickly determined not to be a physician,
Yep.
and then tried chemistry a bit,
Mm-hmm.
biological sciences and microbiology, and then the advent of molecular biology and genomic
Mm-hmm.
engineering was just the perfect balance of biological and precision.
Yeah. And so that starts taking off. And did you think about teaching? I mean, you went into a PhD, but did you have the idea that you wanted to do something more applied, or what was the thought process?
I think everybody that goes in to do a PhD thinks about academic research as the pure way to go.
Yeah.
Interviewed a couple times, offered jobs at university, but that was too one-dimensional. Academic research is
Okay.
a solitary,
Yeah.
driven by a principal investigator, a small lab.
Yeah.
But the scope of doing something practical
Mm-hmm.
and something for society where you could see the immediate benefit and not something esoteric
Yeah.
quickly became the driver.
And how you ended up at Merck Frost, which is a legendary research center in the industry. Tell us how that happened. How did you end up there?
It was in the early 1990s, and Merck and biotechnology and molecular biology and genomics was at its heyday.
Yeah.
Merck was a #1 research company, and they invested hundreds of millions of dollars to open up the largest private research center in Canada.
Yeah.
And that was just a perfect opportunity to return to Canada.
Yep.
And at that time, I had a desire to stay in Canadian science for a number of reasons.
Yeah.
And so I went back, and it turned out to be a fantastic opportunity.
Yeah. And you were there and involved in some really important programs. And tell us a little bit about how did that shape you? And sort of what did that sort of teach you about what you wanted to be doing as your career progressed?
It's a great question. So I went back to Merck Frost in Montreal, and at that time it was a small biotech-sized research.
How big was it?
When I joined, it was about 100 people total.
Oh wow, that is a good size. Yeah, so not very big.
And so it had the best combination of being a biotech, but it being in a mothership that had all the deep resources and expertise that a Merck corporation could bring. So you're this satellite site. You could be independent, innovative,
Yeah.
but you have the deep resources of the mothership.
And did you have some pretty clear leadership from somebody there, or how that was it more of kind of an organic process of kind of bubbling things up?
It was very clearly led by the leadership. Two phenomenal chemists, Bob Young and Bob Zamboni. One eventually ended up in the Order of Canada for his scientific contributions as head of Merck Frost.
Yeah.
So very.
Usually I have to play hockey for that, right? I mean, that's saying something, right?
So they were preeminent, some of the top scientists in Canada,
Yeah.
and they had a clear vision of how to drive chemistry and a clear vision of the type of drugs that they wanted to create.
Yeah. Any connection to the Zamboni machines there?
Unfortunately
Oh,
not.
that would have
but
been such a good story.
you do know your Canadian connections, yeah.
I go to a few hockey games. That's about it. So you've got a reputation as a drug hunter, and do you feel like do you wear that mantle? Do you feel like that's appropriate, and is it one you enjoy, or do you feel like that's you're more of a pure scientist or a leader, or how would you do you see yourself, I guess, as a drug hunter, or is that not the role you envision for how you do things?
I think the business we're in, the ultimate product is a drug
Yeah.
that has benefit. So for me, that's the definition of why we're here.
Yeah.
And so to be in this business, I think you have to be a drug hunter.
Yeah.
And you have to be a generalist rather than a specialist if you want to go after drugs, since there's so many functional areas involved. So I think my expertise is being a generalist in enough scientific areas that allows me to focus on discovering drugs.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And you seem to have also gotten pretty adept at creating the teams that can do that. And I know you've had sort of increasing roles of responsibility as your career progressed within Merck. I think you ended up as the Boston site head and had several hundred scientists working for you there. What have you learned about how to equip teams to do this really hard work that we do, finding new medicine?
You definitely need a lot of technical expertise and functional expertise, but you also really need a team that likes to work cross-functionally together.
Yeah.
And finding the scientists that like to work together in a cross-functional team is key.
Yeah, tell me more about that, because I completely agree. I've seen teams that have had more of a siloed orientation and seen how poorly that can go, and then others where they just seem to just be almost inseparable, right? They're just completely intermixed. I think we're fortunate enough to have the latter here, but how do you cultivate that? What did you do to get that?
I think it starts with recruiting.
Yeah.
So scientists, we all come up very individually oriented. We're focused on our own lab benches.
Yeah.
You have to find people that really do like to work in teams and want to and have that desire, and also recognize that they have to work in teams to get ahead.
Yeah.
And so when we recruit people, we look for that phenotype. So when they visit, they see the team orientation and the culture and the camaraderie. And so we attract people that like that team environment.
Yeah.
But we also need people that love their functional expertise and are domain experts and can dig in and work solely as well.
Yeah. How much of that is if you find the person that's really motivated by that end goal of delivering medicines to patients, how much is that a piece of that sort of puzzle? Because if presumably if that's really what motivates them, then they understand why there's the need for the integration and the cross-pollination and the kind of the sort of integration of different functions.
I'll start personally. I always want to create value in society. And when you come out of academics, particularly your PhD, and you dive deep into something so esoteric, at some point you lift your head up and you say, what am I actually doing? What am I actually contributing?
Yeah.
So I think it's a question that we all come to. What value are we really creating?
Yeah.
And so the people that we attract are those that we identify that share that vision of creating something that is recognizable value to society.
Yeah.
But there are clearly academic scientists that enjoy that pure pursuit of research, just the unknown.
Yeah.
And that's what drives them.
Yeah.
And
More power
two
to
types
them.
of people,
Yeah,
and more power to them.
Yeah.
Exactly.
Let's backfill the story a little bit, and then I want to bring us up to kind of Belharra. So, Merck's obviously seeing your potential. They've put you in charge of a large site. You've got a whole bunch of programs and projects going, tons of resources, still one of the best research organizations in the world. How do you end up at a startup in San Diego, which is Abide, the one you were here at before us here?
I had 24 fantastic years at Merck. It's a fantastic organization. You get to see all aspects of drug hunting,
and
discovery.
I'm not sure anybody does it much better, right? I mean, they really do have such high standards.
Very high standards, and you work with a great team of experts.
Yeah.
There are attractions to the pharma, but what I really like is the basic science, the discovery science, the innovation.
Mm-hmm.
I truly believe that where innovation takes place, discovery is in biotechs.
Mm-hmm.
Large organizations are great in development and have those deep resources to do multi-year projects. But I believe that true innovation and agility comes in a biotech environment, and that's what attracted me to try something different. And I hope everybody has a opportunity to experience both environments.
Yeah. Well, and I hadn't appreciated how relatively small and nimble Merck Frost was when you joined. That's certainly you sort of got a preview of that even within a big organization. So you come out here to be the CSO at Abide, which is another Ben Cravat company. What did you learn from running that chemoproteomics platform, and kind of what did that tee up in your mind, and kind of when the Belharra opportunity came along?
After 24 years at Merck, I wanted to approach drug discovery in a different way. I wanted to use different tools so that
And presumably the charming Boston weather was starting to take its toll.
And San Diego was a great attraction.
Yeah, absolutely.
And that combined with the chemoproteomics applications that Ben and the Scripps Institute were developing, and applying that in a practical way to drug discovery was a new way to think about finding drugs for proteins that hadn't been really targeted yet. So that was the attraction, to do something different, to look at drug discovery with a different set of tools and from a different perspective.
Yeah. And so you have a very successful run at Abide. I think you all have put 4 or 5 compounds into the clinic now. Lundbeck saw that success several years ago and came in and bought you all, but as a very intentional plan to keep it going and keep you as a standalone site and a site of a lot of innovation. They had you running that site for several years. And so, I was part of a dinner conversation in probably the summer of 21. And Ben and Jeremy and Tom, Ben Cravat, Jeremy Caldwell and Tom Pavoti, and topic of a CSO for Belharra came up, and I was close to saying yes on joining. And they said, well, absolutely far and away, the number one person we'd love to get is Gary O'Neill. And they said, but if we could get him, we'd just stop. Like, that's, you don't even need to look any further. And so then they said, let's just go for it, right? And we kind of agreed we would make the approach. So pick up the story from there. You hear about this new thing, and how did that land, and kind of what grabbed your attention?
Certainly the scientific opportunity, as I understood the platform.
Yeah.
Second, the people to work with, whom I knew and trusted, were the 2 drivers.
Yeah.
And third, I had done what I needed to do at Abide and integrating into Lundbeck.
Yeah.
And I wanted to give that leadership team an opportunity to lead that organization. So it's time for me to let that go, move on to something new. And this was a perfect opportunity that fit all the bills.
Yeah. I remember you and I met the first time, and one of the things that we shared and agreed on is that at this point in our careers, maybe the single biggest measure of impact that we care about is how many drugs can we get going and deliver to patients, and I think you and I agreed that one of the things that grabbed us about this platform was we may not have seen a more higher potential for doing that than this platform, and not just in our own hands, but the number of things we could maybe seed in other companies or pass on to other people to carry forward. So we're 2 years in now. Were we crazy back then, or you think this is actually living up to kind of that hope or that expectation?
Not at all. I don't think we were crazy, and it's performed better than I had expected in terms of the opportunities.
Oh, okay.
As you know, we discuss all of the output that is coming from the platform.
Yeah.
And our greatest challenge is prioritizing the opportunities that are in front of us and picking the few shots on goal that we can take that will take us into the clinic. Yeah. So it's absolutely productive, more productive than we thought. Mm-hmm. And we're faced now with picking the opportunities that we want to.
Which is a great problem to have.
It is, yeah.
And so when you think back to the early days in Belharra, what are some of the things that you think were most significant or sort of fateful choices we made in terms of shaping the path we've taken and gotten to this place where I think, again, not to toot our horn, and yet it is shaping up the way people hoped it would, right? This is looking to be the most unbiased screen platform in the industry with maybe the broadest utility across the proteome. So what are some of the key things you think that you would attribute that sort of progress and that sort of evolution and success?
I'm going to start with the type of people you and I agreed to hire.
Yeah.
You can build
jerks mostly, right? And we just said we got to have a lot of jerks.
Actually, I think you said no jerk policy.
I did say that. I think I mentioned a more colorful word, actually. But no, I think we agreed. It had to be somebody we could, stand to have regular beers with.
But tongue in cheek, there was a cultural expectation we set.
Yep.
And secondly, we discussed whether we could build top down, mm-hmm. sort of from a C level and VP down, mm-hmm. or we could build from the bottom up. Mm-hmm. And we agreed, you agreed with me to build from a scientist up. Yeah. And we hired a lot of scientists that were just finishing up their PhDs or had just graduated, but they were really driven, really excited, really motivated. Yeah. And I think that was a key in getting this platform, which is really discovery-based, off and running.
Yeah. And do you think that, is that the same recipe going forward? Or are there new things now that we need to be thinking about kind of folding into the mix?
We've grown a lot over the last 2 years. I think we're well into our 55, 56 employees now.
Something like that,
we're more complex. We have a number of projects. Now we have to bring in some deeper expertise, operationally, people that are experienced in driving drug programs. Mm-hmm. Those are the new type of people that we're bringing into the organization. As we mature and as our programs progress farther down the research pipeline, we're bringing in more expertise to meet that, including hopefully clinical and development people.
Yeah, no, I think that's around the corner, I hope. Talk about Genentech for a minute. How's that going? And sort of what sort of, what do you think we've been learning from working with them?
I'll start off by saying it's a fantastic scientific two-way collaboration. The Genentech scientists are excellent. They're just as involved in the projects as we are involved in the project. So that is a true collaboration, and we always had a vision of having a true collaborative interaction. Yep. So that's the baseline.
I remember one of the things we talked about was the sort of high bar test we would have is if you had a sort of third party drop into a project team meeting of shared, Genentech and Belharra, they would have a hard time picking which people were at which company, right? And that there would be such this sort of interwoven dynamic and interaction that people would just be working as a group and not as two independent teams. And which I still think is the right bar. Do you think we're approaching that? Is that happening?
Everything I've heard is exactly like that. Yeah. True collaboration, exchange of information. Everybody's there for a common person to succeed.
Yeah. What do you see when you look 10 years down the road at Belharra? What do you think this is going to produce, or what it's going to be by that point? It's a ways off. That's beyond the visible horizon.
We've discussed this a few times, and it was an important concept for both you and I, and also for the company. And I think the vision is to have a sustainable drug discovery platform that has wide applicability across the industry, and that is producing drugs that are of value to society. And we both recognize if we can accomplish that and get a few drugs into the market, that would be a success. And it'd be a grand slam if we could become our own independent drug development company. That would be a tremendous accomplishment in a 10-year time frame.
Yeah, and I think I totally agree, right? And I think the fact that we even regularly talk about, like a 10-year plan, I think is indicative of kind of the mindset and the alignment here. People want to do something impactful, right? It's not a goal of when could we get bought, or when could we flip public or something like that. It really is kind of a bigger vision. I want to switch it a little bit, maybe a bit more personal, in that this team, I'm pointing here because we're in San Diego and the majority of our team is based here. Majority of the team is the research group, and this team to a person would run through walls for you. I mean, just absolutely has complete commitment to you and to following your lead. How do you cultivate that? What do you think you do as a leader that brings together the team behind you with such commitment and such alignment and frankly with such teamwork?
My approach is sort of a coaching and an enabling. Mm-hmm. I'm here for them, so that it's their careers that they can contribute to and build something. Yeah. So once they realize that you're there for them, then they'll do anything. Yeah.
Well, but I think there's an element too, which is you are committed to unlocking their full potential, and I think that both of us have come to realize that that's one of the ways to get people to actually bring their best, right?
Absolutely.
As a team member, is what do you want to do? What do you want to be? How do we help you be that? And how do we equip you to kind of grow into that? And it has sort of remarkably sort of synergistic benefit, right, to both develop them and get their contributions.
Very well said. Yeah.
What are you what are you most excited about at Belharra in the next year or two?
As you mentioned, we have our internal pipeline and our partnerships. We have now 2 years in, and we're just starting to create our pipeline of projects that are leading into the clinic. Yeah. Once we get that line of sight into the clinic, that's going to be super exciting for the whole company to have our first clinical program, and that's going to definitely show our maturity as a research organization that we can accomplish that. Yeah. And I think that's coming in the next year to 18 months.
Yeah, no, I agree, and it's it's gonna be fun to turn that corner.
Oh yeah, definitely.
And also to know that's not going to be the one and only, right? I think that's part of what we're trying to build here is a sustainable research platform, right? That's going to keep turning out those kinds of compounds that are worth taking into human testing and bring into patients. So, I'm excited to kind of get that conveyor belt started. So last question for you. So, what do you do when you're not here at Belharra? What's your happy place, and how do you like to spend the time that you're away from the lab and the office?
I love to be outdoors. I love to be outdoors with anybody that loves to exercise, including my wife. Yeah. And we were lucky yesterday to have a day outdoors with the whole team, which is just a great opportunity. And that's my happy place, outdoors.
It's a group that really does enjoy working together, but also enjoys having fun together. And how did that come to be, you think?
I think we set the tone quickly up front that we love to work together, we love to play together, we love to build some relationships that go beyond work. Yeah. And I think that leads to all of the activities that we do outside of work. Yeah. And that creates tremendous trust and relationship. Yeah, no, I think that I would agree. Well, and again, I think you're a big part of leading the charge on that, right? Whether it's hikes or yoga sessions or knocking people off of paddle boards, all that is sort of your domain. So I'm so grateful, Gary, to have you as a colleague and as a friend. It's been an amazing journey these couple years. I can't wait for what lies ahead, but it's just so incredibly indebted to you for all you've done here already, and I'm with you. I can't wait to see what's next. But thanks for taking the time and talking to us, and a little bit of the story of how this all came together, and just appreciate you very much. Likewise, Jeff. Thank you for your leadership in setting the vision, and certainly a lot of the attributes and cultural visions that we share, I think is central to the success of this company. So thank you for your leadership as well. No, well, that's kind of you. There's been an alignment there from the very beginning. It's part of what I think makes it so fun to work together on this stuff. We both have in our mind's eye what we're aiming for, and so it makes it a whole lot of fun to try and go get it done. Well, thank you. Thank you for the time.